Bulletin here on Rwanda Television. We are glad to have you with us. Let's begin with the top stories of the day. Political analysts in the region point out that the continued recognition of the FDLR terrorist group by the DRC is a key driver of the ongoing killings targeting Tutsi in that country. The city of Kigali is currently relocating residents living in high-risk zones with a particular focus on those who have been most affected by the ongoing heavy rains across the country. On the international scene, it's been nearly 2 years now since the conflict in Sudan began. The UN says the fighting has left 60% of the country's 50 million people are in dire and need of aid. My name is Olive Nete, and it's a privilege to have you with us. Now let's kick off today's edition. The Chief of the General Staff of the Ethiopian National Defense Force, ENDF, Field Marshal Binhar Jula, is in Rwanda for a working visit from 13th to 16th April 2025 and was today received by the Chief of Defense Staff of the Rwanda Defense Force, General Mubarak Muganga, at the RDF headquarters in Kimihurura. He also paid a courtesy call on the Minister of Defense, Honorable Juvenal Marizamonda. The visit presents a key opportunity to deepen long-standing bilateral cooperation with discussions between military leaders, exploring new areas of collaboration in defense and other related sectors, reaffirming both nations' commitment to strengthening strategic partnerships and advancing regional peace and security. His visit follows that of General Mubarak Muganga, who traveled to Ethiopia on 13th March 2025, during which a memorandum of understanding on defense cooperation was signed between the two army chiefs. The Chief of General Staff of ENDF also paid tribute to the victims of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi at the Kigali Genocide Memorial, and he visited the Campaign Against Genocide Museum. Moving ahead, political analysts in the region point out that the continued recognition of the FDLR terrorists composed of perpetrators of the genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda by the Democratic Republic of Congo is a key driver in the ongoing killings targeting Tutsi in that country. They further indicate that if no action is taken, the security of the entire region will continue to be threatened. Adam Squizera has more on this.
Last week, FDLR militias in collaboration with the Congolese army FARDC launched attacks in various parts of the city of Goma. This happened at a time when the DRC government and the AFC M23 were just beginning peace process aimed at ending the conflicts in the eastern DRC. Kasumina Jean-Baptiste highlights the cooperation between the genocidal militia FDLR and the DRC government as a serious threat to the peace and stability in the region, especially for Rwanda.
Then were harbored and helped again by the successive governments of DRC, and today they have been integrated into DRC army. So the objective of FDLR, as their name indicates, is to reclaim and recapture Rwanda, because they want to change the leadership in Rwanda, as they say. So violating ceasefire, now they are partners of the Democratic Republic of Congo army. So whatever they do it jointly with FARDC, because they are under the command of FARDC, which is the Congolese government forces. So for them, the objective hasn't changed. For them, what they aimed at is still there. They still dream to come and capture Rwanda, as they say. So whatever military activity they are carrying out across the border is in that line.
He further asserts that this undermines the implementation of various resolutions that have been adopted to find a lasting solution to the crisis.
I think if nothing is done, this peace process will be just a waste of time. It will be just a way of gaining more time to prepare future attacks and find other new partners, because the former were proven to be not successful by former partners of government of DRC army. I mean the European mercenaries, the Burundian army, the Sami DRC, the Wazalendo and the FDLR militia, together with MONUSCO, because they were all participating in this war against AFC M23. I believe that if nothing is done, I think the war will resume very soon, because one of the parties, one party to the conflict is not interested in the peace process. That is why it is sabotaging it, and that is why it is doing acts that are not in the favor of peace process, but in the favor of continuing war and atrocities.
The international community is often deliberately silent on the issue of the genocide ideology promoted by the FDLR, instead shifting blame to Rwanda. Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, Ambassador Olivier Nduhungirehe, describes this as a persistent challenge for both Rwanda and the region.
The army and the militias that committed genocide, who were entertained, who were financed, who were supported, armed by different successive government in Congo. Now it's the group that took the name of FDLR now as we speak. And since 2018 alone, Rwanda suffered no less than 20 attacks from this group. So people confuse the two. We, of course, have a common enemy, the FDLR, because the FDLR, which committed genocide in Rwanda, which is attacking regularly our territory, is also the enemy of the M23, of that community, because it has been attacking also the Congolese Tutsi over the past 30 years.
Senate President Dr. Kaninda Francois-Xavier underscores the ongoing killings of Tutsi in the DRC as a direct result of the ideology promoted by the FDLR, which continues to enjoy support from the DRC government. In an effort to find a solution to the conflict in the Eastern DRC, the African Union has appointed a new mediator in the matter, President Fole Izumina Nyasimbe of Togo. Adams Kwizera, RwandaTV News.
Thank you, Adams. Moving ahead, the city of Kigali is currently relocating residents living in high-risk zones with a particular focus on those who have been most affected by the ongoing heavy rains across the country. Pelagie Mukarusingiza, one of the residents affected by the recent heavy rains, explains how she and her children were caught off guard by the rain and suddenly found themselves without shelter after their house collapsed.
I was sleeping and my two children were still awake when I suddenly heard the roof collapsing on us. One of my children quickly opened the door and we ran out as fast as we could since we live near the sector. We immediately went to the office of the sector where they rescued us.
To address these flooding challenges, the city of Kigali has implemented several measures, including relocating residents from high-risk zones to safer areas that do not endanger their lives. Emma Claudine Hirenganya, the Director General in charge of communication at the city of Kigali, says they are doing everything possible to safeguard the lives of residents still living in high-risk zones.
Meteo has already announced that there will be heavy rains in the coming days. Our priority is to focus on people living in high-risk zones to ensure their safety and protect lives.
More often, the weather alerts warning of heavy rainfall tend to go unnoticed or are not taken seriously by many people. However, every time such an alert is issued, it is usually followed by unusual weather conditions across the country, including strong winds, lightning and landslides, and what many recognize as natural disasters. Even in the city of Kigali, disasters are not to its residents, as they often affect those living in high-risk areas. The city of Kigali reports that so far, the sectors most affected by disasters are Kimisagara, Kigali and Gitega in Nyarugenge district, although the exact number of people who need to be relocated has not been compiled. Authorities say that in Kigali, cell located in Nyabugogo sector, there are currently 275 families identified for relocation. Among them, 229 families are renting. Based on this, the city of Kigali is urging tenants across Kigali to avoid renting houses located in areas that put their lives at risk. Moving ahead, the Rwanda Investigation Bureau has announced that during the commemoration week, more than 80 individuals were arrested on suspicion of crimes related to genocide ideology and related offenses, including discrimination and incitement to division. The Rwanda Investigation Bureau stated that this increase is largely linked to the ongoing conflicts in the eastern region of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Let's follow the details.
The Rwanda Investigation Bureau reports that, compared to last year, during this year's commemoration week, more than 80 case files were received involving individuals suspected of crimes such as genocide ideology, discrimination, and denial of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi.
When comparing last year 2024 to this year, it is clear that cases related to genocide ideology and related offenses have increased from 51 cases last year to 76 this year. According to the analysis conducted by REB, this rise is mainly linked to the conflict in the Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC. Most of these crimes were observed on social media platforms, where individuals attempted to misrepresent the situation in the DRC. In doing so, many provided biased and one-sided narratives, and through these in-depth, misleading explanations, they ended up committing criminal offenses.
Dr. Thierry Murangira, the spokesperson of the Rwanda Investigation Bureau, urges everyone to refrain from committing crimes in general and in particular to avoid any acts related to genocide ideology.
We continue to stand firmly against anyone who attempts to spread genocide ideology, regardless of who you are. We have both capacity and the commitment to confront such acts with the strong support and collaboration of our citizens. What we ask from the public is to report any information related to these crimes without withholding anything to protect certain individuals, because we all understand devastating consequences of the genocide ideology.
The Rwanda Investigation Bureau indicated that among these crimes, offenses against genocide survivors were most reported, with 36 cases. These were followed by genocide denial and negation with 16 cases, and genocide ideology with 11 cases.
Tomorrow news, Nyarugenge district plans to document the history of the genocide against the Tutsi in the Gitega and Chahafi areas, where Tutsi residents held out for 8 days, resisting until April 14, 1994. Enora Gladys has more on this.
Justin Gashaija is one of the survivors from Gitega sector after resisting killers for 8 days. Although he survived, he says many families that lived in the area were completely wiped out.
They started killing at 3 p.m. We were hearing gunshots from other side. They were even shooting people who were on the streets. Because of those 8 days, people who were not killed in Timisagara sought refuge here. Some families were completely wiped out. Like Juvenal's family and Kaitare's family, only one member of Kaitare's family survived. Just because we had joined the army, Vicent's entire family was also killed. There are families where only few members survived.
Verdiana Mukamana, also a survivor from Gitega, says they were betrayed by neighbors they had trusted, and she expresses gratitude to the RPF Inkotanyi soldiers who saved them. I don't have perfect words to thank our President, His Excellency Paul Kagame. I admire him a lot, and I know I'm not the only one. He gave us a good life. I would also like to thank the RPF Inkotanyi for giving us life. They established the FARC Foundation, which helps us pay school fees for our children and access medical treatment. For some of us, the foundation also helped us provide the homes we live in today. The Deputy Executive Secretary of Nyarugenge District, Genevieve Wamahoro, says that the history of Gitega is going to be compiled and preserved. On April 14th, 1994, that is when the killings started in Gitega sector. We will partner with Ibuka to record the history of this place so that future generations will be able to read and learn about it, even when the survivors of the 1994 genocide are no longer alive, to give their testimonies. Those who commemorated in Gitego sector were urged to continue preserving the unity and resilience of Rwandans, which currently stands at 98%. Enora Gladys, RwandaTV News.
To more news, during the 31st commemoration of the genocide against the Tutsi in Kibeho, Nyaruguru district, survivors pointed out the tragedy that unfolded in a place once considered sacred, home to many religious figures. They pointed out the profound injustice of the mass killings of Tutsi in such a location, especially given the involvement of some religious leaders in the genocide. Nevertheless, today the survivors have rebuilt their lives and remain determined in their pursuit of progress and development. Enora Gladys once more.
In the testimony of Manirakiza Mark, a survivor from Kibeho, he mentions that historically they had always believed that the house of God was a refuge for the Tutsi since 1959. He, along with other survivors from Nyaruguru, shared that the 1994 genocide was a tragic turning point as those who were supposed to provide sanctuary, including some religious leaders, turned against them and participated in the killings.
There was no effort by members of the clergy to rescue the Tutsi who had fled here. Clergy members who were not Tutsi actively participated in the killing of Tutsi alongside with the Interahamwe militia and other citizens. They killed the Tutsi who had sought refuge in this place. We fled here with the hope of being rescued, because our parents had told us that in the 1959 they had also sought refuge in this church and was served. We strongly believed that no one could kill people in a church, but we fled here, and they followed us and found us even in the sacred place.
After being relentlessly hunted and witnessing the killing of their loved ones, the survivors of the genocide in Kibeho have continued the struggle for development. They affirm that good governance has restored their hope for life. The Minister of National Unity and Civic Engagement, Dr. Jean Damascene Bizimana, strongly criticizes the religious leaders, mainly priests, who were numerous in the Kibeho area, for their significant role in carrying out the malicious plan to exterminate the Tutsi instead of protecting them. He urges Rwandans to continue fighting against the ideology of genocide.
Even among those who were supposed to lead people of God, some participated in the both planning and execution of the genocide. This parish of Kibeho was known to have many religious leaders. That's what we grew up knowing. And it was indeed the reality. Priests, nuns, and brothers alike. It was considered an exemplary parish in that vocation. As such, it should have been a place where many people survived. Unfortunately, some of those in religious leadership failed to live up to the values of humanity and protecting life. I urge you to honor the values of those we are about to bury and to live by them. Even those who killed them knew the goodness of these victims. They were even friends. Let it be remembered that those who killed committed a grave wrong. I call on them to repent, and for their families to reflect with sadness and shame that their loved ones became murderers. Do so with the intention of ensuring such atrocities never happen again.
The Genocide Memorial in Kibeho holds the bodies of Tutsi who were killed in Kibeho Church, while others were burned alive. Additional bodies were brought from various surrounding areas, with the total number of victims exceeding 30,000. Enora Gladys, RwandaTV News.
Nyiri muto arababwiraga data bati ntabwo agira umukamo mwinshi utunze inka imwe, ariko nigeze acika intege. Mama akinjira mu bucuruzi hari abamubwiraga bati ntabwo watera imbere udakorera mu iduka rigezweho, ariko ntibyamusubije inyuma, yakoranaga umwete. Njya muri kaminuza hari abanshidikanyagaho bavuga ko nashobora kaminuza naturuka mu muryango wifashije, ariko byaragiye nanditse amateka mashya. igihe cyo gutera ishema umuryango wanjye kigeze, bamwe bakomeje kumbwira bati ntabwo watera umuryango wawe ibyishimo n'ishema, ariko narabishoboye. Hari abakekaga ko nasigira umurage ukomeye abankomokaho, ariko ubu mfite uruganda rutunganya amata. Banki ya Kigali yabaye umufatanyabikorwa wanjye mu rugendo rwose, inzozi zanjye zibimamo. Bigereho.
Mvangiye kubarira 1 2 3 itugwamo. So 1 2 3 gwamo. Mugwan bro.
Uwa mbere kanda akanyenyeri 3 4 5 akanyenyeri 2 urwego maze nawe ugwemo.
Ndanezero umunezero nsaba umutima, ndakora akazi kanjye ndacatinga, data ntizishira, enda nawe gwamo.
Wikwisondeka.
You're still watching RTV News. Now to matters making headlines globally. It's been nearly 2 years now since the conflict in Sudan began. The United Nations says the fighting has left 60% of the country's 50 million people in dire need of aid, and famine has been officially declared in multiple areas. Al Jazeera with the details.
The United Nations describes the situation in Sudan as the most devastating humanitarian and displacement crisis in the world, a catastrophe of staggering scale and brutality. Conflict has forced more than 14 million people from their homes. That's more than the entire population of Switzerland. 1.5 million people have fled to Egypt, more than 1 million to South Sudan, more than 750,000 to Chad, more than 250,000 to Libya, 42,000 to the Central African Republic, and 72,000 to both Uganda and Ethiopia. Many of these countries have their own severe economic and security problems, and some are among the poorest in the world. Another 11 million people have been displaced inside Sudan. The UN says acute hunger is a growing problem and that famine has been confirmed in 5 areas in North Darfur and the eastern Nuba Mountains. As fighting continues, reaching those most in need is increasingly dangerous and complicated. Many people had already been displaced by violence before the latest conflict started 2 years ago. And many are refugees from neighbouring countries who had sought safety in Sudan. The UN describes Sudan as the definition of a perfect storm. Shocking human rights atrocities with millions displaced. We are losing a generation to this war. Charles Stratford, Al Jazeera.
Now to Australia, a famous Gold Coast beach is under rehabilitation after it was hit by Cyclone Alfred last month. Up to 80% of its sand was washed out to the sea. Al Jazeera once more.
This is the aftermath of Cyclone Alfred on Australia's Gold Coast. Waves more than 12 metres high were recorded, carving up the coastline. Up to 4 million cubic metres of sand was eroded, creating 6-metre cliffs along the beaches.
Cyclone Alfred was the biggest storm that's hit here in over 50 years, and we get big cyclones like 30, 40 years, and it ripped through the town.
The recovery process has been swift. Heavy machinery has been deployed to rebuild the beaches, trucking in tons of sand. This ship is pummeling up to 1,500 cubic metres of sand in each load, fast-tracking the recovery phase in a bid to get the region ready ahead of the busy school holiday period.
We have to get the dredge there where the sand is, it hoovers it up and then shoots the sand back onto the front of the waves. Then Mother Nature pushes the sand onto the beach and then we take it on from there.
50 kilometres of beaches have been impacted by Cyclone Alfred. This dredging will continue for the next 8 weeks. As the climate changes, beaches like this one here on the Gold Coast are having to adopt engineering solutions such as strengthening seawalls to prevent ongoing erosion and to protect its main asset, which is tourism. Sand pumping has been a long-standing practice on the Gold Coast. Rock walls have been built along the strip and artificial dunes have been created as a natural buffer between the sea and the shore to cope with an increasing number of extreme weather events.
What we do as coastal engineers, we work with that natural process and we allow additional buffer either up on the front or on the downside to let nature take its course, but just in a more sort of subdued way so the erosion effect is not quite as impactful.
The dredging has also created good conditions for surfers.
It's just creating these great waves, and people come to Australia from all over the world to surf the waves that we have here on the Gold Coast. Based on the current weather forecast, the local authorities hope that this 50-kilometre coastline will be back to its former state within weeks. Sarah Clark, Al Jazeera, the Gold Coast.
And the story brings us to the end of tonight's bulletin, but before we leave, a reminder of the top stories that made this edition. Political analysts in the region point out that the continued recognition of the FDLR terrorist group by the DRC is a key driver of the ongoing killings targeting Tutsi in that country. The city of Kigali is currently relocating residents living in high-risk zones with a particular focus on those who have been most affected by the ongoing heavy rains across the country. On the international scene, it's been nearly 2 years now since the conflict in Sudan began, and the United Nations says the fighting has left 60% of the country's 50 million people in dire need of aid. Today's bulletin. Thank you for joining us. On behalf of the entire news team, we wish you a productive week ahead. Stay safe.